Hello and welcome back to a New Pace podcast. So my name's Lesley. I'm an artist and art therapist, and I wanted to create this podcast to bring people together to have natural conversations about these elements: pause, act, create, empower. And it feels like today we've got such a guest coming on that I feel could like really contribute to the podcast and to like really enrich people, and really looking forward to speaking with her. So Chantelle Gianinotti is from Melbourne in Australia, and she runs the Mind Compass, and I want to just say hello, welcome.
Thank you so much, Lesley. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on today.
You are welcome. So how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. But to be honest, it's been a rough couple of weeks in my mind. So, we all experience those sort of things, and it's the ebbs and the flows that we go through. But today I woke up with a new day.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that honesty, and just the that just generalness, that having a bit of a rough time at the moment, and actually sort of normalizing that.
Mm.
And like we all have ups and downs, and we all have sort of times when we might not feel perfect, or we might feel like we're struggling a little bit, but then actually keeping going, or times when you might sort of reach out for help. And and I'm wondering that, just thinking about help, and like you're you're in this position maybe where you are helping people, but you're also sort of needing to make sure that your cup's full as well. So that's something that we can come back to later on, and
Yeah.
like how you fill your cup. And but first of all, could you talk to me a little bit about what you do and how you help people?
Yeah. So the Mind Compass came out of a few struggles that I've had within my life. And I hit a turning point where I did pause and I did reflect on life, and I needed to find my purpose because I'd lost it. I lost who I was, what I wanted to do, where I was going with life. So with the Mind Compass, what I um, came out of with that was that I did want to help people that were within the same sort of situations that I've experienced, because I'm 41 now, but I guess my life started to change when I hit 25, and then it kind of the incidences that went on through my life definitely changed perspectives and changed the way that I viewed myself, but also how I viewed life as well. And I also had a belief that these things that I went through, and I'll head back to them a bit later, but these experiences that I went through were not common. And when I was trying to seek help, I really struggled to find it. Um, so that's kind of where the Mind Compass had come from. I wanted to connect with women, in particularly because being a woman, I could relate a little bit more, but also my experiences were very generalized towards women and labels and various other things. So that's where I thought, well, I was, after a very long road, I was able to rebuild myself. So I wanted to look at helping people in particular rebuild their life. Because as I said before, we have ebbs and flows of different things, and sometimes we get lost in those hurdles that we experience. And I feel it's really important that having a support network, or having an understanding of why these things are coming to be and why we're feeling certain feelings, are needing to be recognized. So that was the background of the Mind Compass. But as I stated before, the Mind Compass was from various different events that I went through. And I feel as though, when I hit 40, I went through it, early midlife crisis as well,
Mm.
where, I did feel completely lost, and had been working in different industries, in the counselling industry, particularly working with young people, and trying to have an understanding and build them into amazing humans and adults. But what I had noticed when I left that field is there was a lot of adults that didn't have that support back then that are needing that support now. But a bit of a timeline on, the things that happened in my life that really changed. So as I said, I'm 41 now, and this has been going on since I was about 25. So when I hit 25, I was diagnosed with severe depression and moderate anxiety, and then was medicated for that. And that was due to something very small. I was made redundant from a position that I had, but being very career focused when I was in my 20s, because I didn't go to university or anything straight after school. I went straight into a job, and my main goal was to work up companies, get to, a big point in that company. And I was able to do that. But then I lost my job, and then it felt like I lost everything. So that was my first point where I didn't understand what identity was. Like, I did from a point of, finding yourself in your teens and having an understanding of, sexuality and, your interests and your values. So I knew that around identity, but I didn't understand that only having a career and then having that gone was my identity at that point in time. So that was the first rebuild. So that led me into counseling, because I, linked in with psychologists, and I thought, yeah, I could do this. I enjoy helping people. I've always been a helper. And I was always the go-to person in our friendship groups to sort of help them through their struggles and their things. So that happened. Then when I hit 30, it is, I find my story is the major milestones in life, which, some people have very positive impacts, and I unfortunately didn't. So when I hit 30, I was feeling quite unwell. I was in a very stressful job at that point in time. And I was very run down, and I just felt it was the job. Like, I didn't think anything medically was happening to me at that point. And I had gone on a holiday with a friend, noticed some things in my body. Like, the lower half of my body started swelling out of nowhere, which was quite scary, to be honest. But I just thought it was because of the trip that we went on. We were driving. It takes 2 days to drive from where we were in Melbourne to Queensland, which is another state in Australia. So I just thought sitting down and doing all that stuff, that was the main cause. So I came back from holiday. The swelling was getting worse, so went and saw my doctor. As soon as my doctor saw me, they sent me for emergency tests and scans. And then I had to go back very early the next day, and I was called an ambulance because I was going into heart failure and kidney failure.
Goodness me.
Yeah. So that it was confronting. What I did notice during that time, my family was really struggling with that, because doctors were talking to them as though I was near the end of life. Though they did keep that quite hidden from me until I recovered. So I was trying to just keep very positive for them, but I was in hospital for about a month, trying to recover. My heart function went down to 21%, which in their terms is very serious. But in saying that, I felt fine, and I couldn't really grasp what was happening and how the severity of what was happening either, because I was able to move around, I was able to walk, I could talk, I wasn't I'd look around in the hospital ward that I was in, and firstly, I was the youngest person there, and the doctors kept reminding me that we don't have people your age in here experiencing this. But also the people that were in the unit that I was in, which was the cardiac unit, um, they were quite older, so they were facing, those near-death experiences, and there would be lots of code greys coming through and things that was quite scary.
Mm.
And when I look back on it now, absolutely terrifying. But at the time, I think I just had to put myself in a state of mind where I wasn't ready to go. I was young. I still had a lot of living to do. Um, and why it happened, doctors are still unsure. They seem to think it might have been a viral infection that I contracted, but there was no evidence of that after all their investigation. Um, so that was the first moment where my body told me to stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, I didn't listen to it.
Mm.
I kept going.
Yeah.
um, so with the heart failure and the kidney failure, I did have to do what they call cardiac uh, rehabilitation. So I did have to learn. I just had to learn how to live again, to be honest. Um, Simple things that we all take for granted, like brushing your hair or having a shower or just getting out of bed, would take all the energy that I had. I remember my first day out of hospital, and I was just, I showered because I wanted to get rid of all the sort of medical
Yeah. Feel a bit
and the,
better.
that hospital smell, because I was in there for so long. So I remember being in the shower and having to yell out to my parents because I had to move back home. To help me because I couldn't stand, and I would only had been in the shower for like 10 minutes. And when I had come out, I had to get my family to help dry me and put clothes on me because I had no energy left. And I'd have to go to sleep. And then when I'd wake up, I went to brush my hair. I had to have another nap because I just lost everything. And I had to rebuild muscle in me as well. So that's where the cardiac rehab came in. So that was about 6 months of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, that was my first knock on the door to stop, but I didn't, unfortunately.
Mm.
Um, so then um, it was so that the cardiac incident was probably one of the main turning points in my life where everything changed. I had to give up quite a lot of things that I really enjoyed doing. I had to learn skills again. I was a musician and a singer. I couldn't sing anymore. I had to rebuild my strength within my voice and my muscles and all that sort of stuff. So, that took a few years to kind of gain all of that back.
Mm.
And um, medication wise, and this is going to be for the rest of my life, I'm on like 12 tablets a day just to keep me functioning and to keep me going. Which when I was in my 30s, that was really hard. Like a lot of my friends were heading out to clubs and things, or they were finding their partners, settling down, getting married, having parties. And, I struggled to do any of that. So it was a real unfortunate incident, but I thank my lucky stars because a lot of people don't make it out of that, and I did. And that's the first point where I said, well, this has happened to me for a reason. I just need to work out what that reason is. Um, After that, I met my now husband, so at the time, um, and I often say to him, and he blushes when I say it, but I often say to him that he was the one that mended my broken heart. Because as I was I had to go to regular cardiologist checkups and various other things for years. I'm still doing them now, 10 years on. They couldn't believe how I recovered. They did tell me that the condition my heart was in, I should never have recovered as well as I have. And, I think I was at sort of a low point when that all sort of happened. And a part of my sort of self-healing over the last couple of years, I did realize that mentally I wasn't in a great space. And not that I would often express that I didn't want to be here, but I didn't want to do anything to myself. But I think subconsciously, that's where this condition came in, because it gave me a bit of a kick up the bum to say, you either want to be here or you don't. So, what is it? But I have the consequences, I guess, of dealing with quite a serious condition very young. So because of all the cardiac stuff, I was getting monitored. I think it was every 3 months I had to go see someone. It started monthly, and then it died off after a few years. And then with that, I had a nurse come in, and I find like the cardiologists and the surgeons and the higher up hospital staff don't have a lot of bedside manner, and they don't kind of give you everything that you need to know. They just give you all the medical facts on your condition, and that's it. This one time I had this real lovely nurse come in, and we were just having a conversation waiting for the cardiologist to come in. And she looked at my age, and at the time I was 34. So it was 4 years on. And she said to me, oh, being 34, you would have a family, and, you've got kids. How old are they? And I said to her, no, I don't. I said, I'm 34. I've had a partner for 4 years then. I said, we've often spoken about children and our future together, but it's, it's something that's on the cards. It's not something I want right now. Her face dropped. I remember the expression on her face. And she just went, wait a minute, I need to get the cardiologist. And I was like, okay. So then next minute, 2 cardiologists come in. And they walked straight in, and they just said, you can't be pregnant now. You can't, not on your condition. And so I got them to explain more. And it was more around the high impact, because pregnancy has an impact on your heart, and your heart does enlarge, then that could cause me to go back into heart failure. And secondly, a couple of the medications that I was on would cause deformities within a child. This was 4 years on. So I had been on this medication already for 4 years, and no one sort of explained that to me. So what I thought was, well, if that could do damage to a baby, what damage has it done inside of me at this point in time?
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So then it was another whirlwind of investigations if I could conceive children. And that was linking into the most prestigious hospitals that we have in Melbourne. So we've got the Royal Melbourne Hospital and the Royal Women's Hospital. And I had to go through another 3 years of various different tests, changing my medication, because again, there was likely of heart failure to happen if they were to take me off some, put me on different ones. So that it was a bit of a testing game. There was fertility testing as well, to see if we could conceive naturally. It was an absolute whirlwind. I was seeing them. I saw genetic specialists to find out if there was a genetic line in the heart condition that, could potentially be passed on. I was seeing gynecologists. I was seeing nurses, everyone under the sun. and it happened so fast that I couldn't get my head around it, and I still pretty much can't get my head around what happened during that time. Even though it was a 3-year process, um, it was one thing after another for those 3 years. Um, and I just didn't think that something, because I wasn't feeling that unwell during my heart episode, I didn't think that that would have caused what the lead up was, which the lead up was that we ended up having to do IVF.
Mm.
And again, so after the 3 years, I was 37, turning 38. So already as a woman, I'm hitting the near 40s. They would explain it to me that if I was to fall pregnant, it was a geriatric pregnancy.
Wow, what a
At,
word to use when
I
you're
know.
young.
Yeah, at 37, that was really confronting. I'm like, I haven't even hit my 40s yet. Like, can we calm down a bit? Um, so yeah, once we did the fertility testing, we did find out that conceiving naturally on both sides wasn't possible. Um, so we went through the IVF process. Um, I feel for anyone that is going through that process, because the feelings that you have, like, the things that I went through was I felt ashamed that I had to go through that way.
Yeah.
I grew up in quite Catholic households, so it was sort of your God's given right as a woman to conceive a child.
Mm.
So I'm not religious now myself, but that has always stuck with me, unfortunately. So I felt a lot of shame. I was very alone because a lot of my friends were just conceiving children naturally. And I felt I had to hide it from everyone. Um, I going through the hormones that you're injecting into yourself, I didn't know if I was coming or going most days. I didn't know what personality I was going to wake up to. Um, I would also keep a lot in because I didn't want to unleash on my husband, because he doesn't deserve any of this. It was just an uncontrollable situation. And it's also painful. I had to kind of get over a fear of injecting needles into myself very quickly. And there's no sort of support around that. So we went through 3 cycles. That's We probably would have gone for more if the outcome was different. Um, but in my instance, when we did the first cycle, all my cycles never reached implantation.
Right.
Yeah. So the first cycle, no eggs were collected. So we didn't even get to that stage where they would go
Mm.
in and get any. Um, so they realized something was wrong with me then. The second cycle, they changed the plan. We were able to get eggs retrieved, but there was no creation of any embryos. And there was I think only 2 eggs survived out of, I think it was about 8 I got it that first time. And then when we went for the third one was to really check if there was really something wrong with me. Um, the the specialist did tell me, we have picked up that your egg quality isn't great, but they wanted to try different medications and look at my sort of history, and then move forward to see if they could, achieve any sort of different results from the second option. Um, so then we went and did that. We went through egg collection. That was all fine. I think they got 8 again, and we got 3 eggs that survived that there. They would have an app and you would get your embryos sent to you, so you could see them develop over the time. So we saw that one was working. Yeah, we saw one was working. We had another one. We saw nothing was really happening with that. But the first one, something started to happen. And then I received a call, and it was a Sunday, which was, I figured all places to sort of shut on a Sunday. But we received a call from a nurse on the Sunday just to let us know that there was no further development on that embryo, and that they then went away and checked my eggs, and they actually found them not viable at all, and that would mean that I would have to go in and see the specialist. So we booked in an appointment, we did that, and it just pretty much, they were very blunt and straight out and just said, there's no point going again because you can't conceive children. So I was shattered. Yeah. And I found it surprising because I was never a girl. Like, I've got many friends that when they were little, they wanted to be a mum. That's all they wanted to do. I never wanted that. I was always career focused, career orientated. Money was a driver. I was that sort of person. So then I had to figure out, how do I get over grieving for something I didn't know I wanted? And that was hard because there was no one around that supported that. And that's when I knew that was the second turning point in my life, where my body just went, you need to stop, you need to pause and reflect. So that did take a lot out of me. I did go to see a psychologist, someone that specializes in fertility. Didn't find them to be helpful whatsoever. They just kind of, I asked the question of, how do I get over this? How do I move forward? How do I fill the void? And all they would say to me is that there are donor eggs out there. You can adopt, but then I'd already expressed to them that that's not my option. The option was it's part of me or it's nothing. And my husband agreed with that as well. So we were very, very strict on that. But the psychologist couldn't tell me how to move forward. And I would often go away from them thinking, isn't that your job? Isn't that what you're meant to do? You're meant to help me move forward through the feelings that I'm feeling. So that was where the first thought of the mind compass came from, because what I was realizing is that the supports that we have out there, they only really deal with the situation if they know how to deal with it or if they've experienced it. But they don't know how to deal with a situation that they hadn't experienced. So I was seeing a fertility counselor that had children. So wouldn't understand the loss and the grief of something that you can't have. Wouldn't have understand my position of, if it's not mine, it's not going to happen. And wouldn't be able to give me those understandings on how to move forward, because they haven't had to do it before. They might have to have done it in their life for something different, but not through this. So that's where the first thought of the mind compass started to evolve, because I went, if I can help women that go through the IVF component, because that is traumatic anyway. But if the outcome's not great, like, who are we turning to? Who are we trying to get that support from? So yeah, it was a bit of a light in the back of my head. I hadn't fully understood what I needed to do, but it was there. A couple of years on from that, I started experiencing quite a lot of pain. Especially it was after COVID, I noticed it more. So parts of my body would be quite inflamed, very painful. I wasn't able to function. I started taking a lot of time off work, and didn't have an understanding of what was happening. And I thought maybe mentally I wasn't doing okay, but I felt okay.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was in that sort of state of, you know, poor mental health.
Mm.
Um, I was able to sort of find myself. I did that journey. I found myself after the IVF thing, um, and put myself, I said before, I'm a musician. So I went straight back into that because that was what my healing place. I started writing songs. I started recording. I went into bands, and I felt fulfilled, um, and still do to this day. But my body was showing me physical signs that something was not okay. And after the heart incident, I made sure I listened to my body. I might not listen to it to pause, but I listened to it to, when things are off. So went to doctors and things. After lots of tests again, because they had to see if it was part of my heart condition, if something was happening there. So there's always going to be a testing point in anything medically that I do. We did find out that it was from long COVID. I did contract COVID 3 times. The last time, I don't remember 2 weeks of my life. And I believe that was my tipper. And I developed, I guess, fibromyalgia. And what was the other thing? There was one more thing, having to do with the nerves. So the nerves within my body just being inflamed and reacting. That was my final tipping point, thank goodness, where I just went, okay, stop, listen to what my body is now telling you. And still still undergoing quite a lot of investigations for that at the moment, where they're even looking at endometriosis, because it is quite linked to times of the month for me. And there's going to be a surgery coming up for that, to do some exploration around there. But yeah, once I was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and I know that it's something again that I'm going to have to continue on for the rest of my life, I needed to find ways to survive, because holding down a job was really difficult. I was made redundant from my job 2 months ago. I was the only person made redundant. So I do put it down, it was to my chronic illness, because I did have to take quite a lot of time off. I was seeing quite a lot of people, specialists and all that sort of stuff. But also I did have to take time off because there were days I couldn't get out of bed and I couldn't function. And they weren't really open to a work from home option, which would have helped me out. But yeah, being the only person made redundant in a company, I just went, well, it's not because you don't need me anymore. It's because of other reasons, unfortunately. So the little light that was the mind compass in the back of my head, I went, that's what I need to do. That's my purpose in life. I did a lot of soul searching over the last 12 months. And I went, my purpose is to help people. And I've always known that to be my purpose, but didn't know who to target. And with the mind compass, what I am hoping is that, people that have gone through similar experiences to me, like I have a big belief that we could go through the exact same experience, but experience it quite differently. So, people that have had similar experiences to me, people that are feeling alone and lost, don't know who they are anymore, because of, they're expected to be at a label. So a parent, a mother, someone that holds down a full-time job, someone that's healthy, you know, that doesn't fit in those labels, and I don't fit into those labels at all, that I could be that person that helps them through what they need to do. And I also use quite a lot of neuroscience backed methods as well, because, as I said before, dealing with the trauma wasn't something I needed. I needed to know how to move forward. And if I didn't have those skills, then I didn't know what to do. So a lot of the work that I do with people is around neuroscience, getting rid of those limiting beliefs, having an understanding of where those emotions come from, and the sensations that we do feel within the body. Also having an understanding of the triggers, and what that means, and how we can sort of remap the triggers and remap the feelings and emotions that we get with that. And yeah, just making sure people feel whole, because we only live one life. I'll get all cliche here now, but we only live one life. And if we're not living it for us, we're living it because we have a belief that we're meant to be something, or, you know, we're not doing what we enjoy, then what's the point? Why do we do it? So long-winded story, apologies, but that's where my life sits at the moment. And I know that everything that I've gone through and going through at the moment is a daily battle. And, you know, as you opened up the show, I said I was struggling this week, but I'm able to pull myself through it because I allow myself to feel the emotions that I'm feeling, acknowledge those emotions, but then release those emotions. And I don't allow myself any more than 3 days when it's a negative emotion. And I think that's really important, because I understand what my triggers are, and I understand that anything more than 3 days, I will head into a downward spiral. So I do make note that on the 3rd day, if I'm still sort of struggling with something, I will work on it to ensure that I can release it. And then I always say to myself before I go to bed after that 3rd day, tomorrow is a new day. I'm going to wake up with a clear head, and I move forward. And I think that's really important for people to do with anything in life, really.
Thank you so much. It just feels like there's so much that you've shared there so honestly, and just thinking about all of, you know, all those kind of different things in your life, experiences, times when you thought that you were going down one path and then things changed, times when you were hit by some huge, huge physical health challenges, like just on a number of occasions, and just the reality of that. So I really appreciate you sharing, you know, the depth of your experience. And I imagine, of course, you've literally shared the kind of the tip of the iceberg of what you've really gone through, because we can only imagine, it's like what you've been through based on our maybe capacity to mentalize, or capacity to think, well, yeah, maybe I've experienced anemia, for instance. I know what it's like to brush my teeth tired, but not in the same way that, like, and if that was hard, then imagine, Chantelle, like that would have been like enormous for you. So
Yeah, it was.
as you were speaking, there were certain things that really came up, and I had the question about maybe what some of those hardest things were, and then it pivoted for me about people's responses to your experiences, and maybe some of those, um you know, like societal expectations on women, and some of the words that came up about like geriatric sort of pregnancy, and you
Yeah.
know, you like you're approaching this as a geriatric. It's like, well, when I was in my 30s, I would have never even thought about that at all. You wouldn't think like that, and I'd
No,
imagine a man wouldn't either. So
no.
there's so many things like that, and then the dialogue about um even just being asked about like children and pregnancy and assumed that you had children. So
Yeah.
do you have any like what was that like while you going through all of those things and then you're maybe hit hard with those assumptions and those like beliefs about who you should be?
Mm. Um, at the time, especially with the geriatric pregnancy, I laughed. I laughed in front of them. I went, "You've got to be kidding me." Um, and they said, "No, because you're over the age of 35." And even that, I just went, "What? Like, that's insane." They went, "Yeah, between the ages of anything over 35, in the pregnancy world, you're classified as like a high risk pregnancy or a geriatric pregnancy." Um, and because I had already hit the high risk mark, that's sort of how they would always refer to me if I was to fall pregnant. And I just remember laughing at them each time because I just thought it was absolutely ridiculous. Um, but even, going back to my heart failure, I was in a ward with people that were 60 plus.
Yeah.
Um, and I'd often have them come up to me going, "Why are you in here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, I've got heart failure or something." Like, I was trying to get my head around it. They're like, "Oh, you're too young. You should be running out, enjoying life and doing all these things." And I'm like, "I wish, but I'm attached to a heart monitor and I can't get out of bed because of it." So yeah, look, it was confronting. It really was, especially in those times, but more so for the pregnancy journey or non-pregnancy journey that we went on, um, because there was a lot of things thrown at me at that point in time. So one of the conversations I remember having with both the gynecologist and the cardiologist in the same room was two things that stood out and made me very fearful. Um, the first one was if you were to fall pregnant, you would have to deliver the baby at between 24 and 27 weeks. Um, and that my husband was quite terrified because he's like, "What if you don't pull through this okay? We're also going to have a baby that's not fully developed that." And he's like, "I can't do this on my own. Like I couldn't do this on my own." So there was a lot of big conversations that my husband and I had to have. And he would often turn around to me and say, "If it was between you or the child," he goes, "I will always choose you." So those were big conversations that I never thought in my life I would ever be having. The second thing that they had said to me is that, and I breezed over it when I was talking about it, is that I would go back into heart failure and I could die, and that was the term that they used. Um, and I just kind of went, "Is it worth it?" Like, is it worthwhile going through this if you're not confident that I'm going to make it out the other side? Um, so we really, and I think that's why it took us the 3 years, because we really had to fully understand the situation, the severity of the situation, to make an informed decision. And once we got towards the end of the 3 years, they started seeing my test results coming back pretty normal, and that there had been improvements with my heart and various other things. That's when they could say, "Oh, you might fall back into heart failure." It wasn't a certainty. Um, so that kind of gave us a little bit more confidence to go, "Well, let's give it a go." Um, but yeah, it's very confronting to have that sort of language thrown at you. Um, I guess we always know that there is going to be an end to life. We don't know when that is, but when
Mm.
it's told that you're near there, or if you do this, you will, it's terrifying.
Yeah, I can
Absolutely
imagine.
terrifying. Yeah, yeah. Um, and not only was I affected, my husband was quite affected too. So every time I would go for IVF or anything like that, and especially the times that I would have to go under anesthetic, because I had to be tested to go under anesthetic. He was worried he was going to get a phone call that I hadn't made it, which I know how much my condition has affected me, but I didn't have an understanding of how it affected people around me as well. And, telling family that, this is the information that we got from the cardiologist that I could go back into heart failure. They didn't want me to fall pregnant either. So, I needed to do it I'm very stubborn and independent. I needed to do it because I needed to know if it was ever going to be possible. But everyone around me never wanted me to go through it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And just hearing you, I'm just sort of thinking about those life experiences, and that sort of you maybe not been growing up thinking, oh, I always want to be a mummy and want to be a career person and wanting to like really focus on those things. And then actually, like for a lot of people, they fall pregnant really naturally. They may go down that line of being a career, and then they maybe get to, like, you hear of people having pregnancies when they are in the 40s and later, and
Yeah.
there's not any issues, and there's not any kind of question or shoulds about it, or maybe you should
Yes.
have done this years ago, or maybe this was this. And it does make me think about like how hard it is to navigate um life when something does hit you and throw you a curveball, when other people haven't experienced that, and when they're maybe their map of the world is that actually we do this is the order that we do this, and always like trying to empathize but not really knowing, not having that experience. So this bounces me back into the sort of your work that you do with people, and how like it makes so much sense that you being there and you having that experience yourself can absolutely help other people that are in that place where they may be sick of hearing people asking them why don't they adopt, when
Yes.
actually, like, you don't get it. You don't get
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
actually, like, being able to help people who know that you sort of do get it, even when their experience, no one's experience is ever the same.
Yeah.
So talk me through that, what that work would look like. You already mentioned about um looking at those beliefs and mapping those things out, and maybe something about purpose that comes in, I think, as well. So if
Yes.
somebody was come to see you, how would it work?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different programs that I do run. I worked alongside another organization called Quality Mind, and with them, I had built the identity rebuilding method. So with that, it's either 6 or 12 weeks, depending on what people are ready for. And it's weekly sessions where we understand the limiting beliefs that we have, um, and acknowledging them. We then go and look at, well, how do we change those limiting beliefs? And when I talk about it, it sounds so easy. And I do understand when people are like, well, that's not going to work for me, because they're in a really hard place at the moment and they can't see the change. But when we look at our limiting beliefs, what we look at is, for example, one of mine that would always keep coming up was I wasn't worthy. Um, and it's reframing that into something that is meaningful. And the way we do that is just create the opposite. So just to say that we are worthy. Um, but the joy of the neuroscience benefit is that repetition is the key. So if we only say that to ourselves once, of course, we're just going to continue on with life and nothing's going to change. It is continuously telling ourselves that when we do have that limiting belief of I'm not worthy, thinking about things that we are worthy about and believing that and have an understanding of that. Um, it is also, like I said before, looking at the triggers. So what emotions come in where are we triggered? If we feel anxiety, is our heart racing? Do we get sweaty palms? Does our throat close up? Like those sort of things, to have an understanding of what our body is feeling as well. Because sometimes when we are in a spiral of thought, we're feeling emotions, but we don't know what they are. But we can recognize sensations within the body. So it is really pulling that apart and acknowledging different feelings and where they sit within the body is another one. We also will look at goal setting. I think having goals is really important. Even though I'm a musician, when I was a teenager, that was my goal. I wanted to be a singer, not famous, but I wanted to have music in my world. And then I gave up on that goal to fit into the labels of being a parent and to having a career. So I think, rediscovering what our purpose is, whether that is, it could be something very small, it could be something grand and amazing. But having those short goals to meet a longer goal. But having the short goals also helps you know, it helps you understand that you can achieve things. And they could be something as simple as, if someone's in a very depressive state, they might not, maintain themselves. So they might not brush their hair or anything like that. So a simple goal of, I'm going to brush my hair 5 days a week, or I'm going to brush my hair 7 days a week. They sound very simple, and people, listening out there might go, oh, that's easy. Like I can easily do that. But someone that's in quite an unhealthy mental state will often let themselves go. So, it is really important that we look at the body, but we also look at the mind and the soul and making them work together. We look at sort of meditations and the right meditations for you as well. So, enable to become clearer around our thoughts and our feelings. And we also look at journaling as well, which I always used to say in my counseling practice when I was working with young people. I would often give them a journal and say, this is psychology 101, write down your feelings. Tell me how you're feeling. And I find that, and something that I've gotten into a lot over the last couple of years is that automatic writing, just to get it out. And that's often how I write my songs as well. It's just automatic. I completely shut off and allow pen to paper, just do what you want to do. And I think from there it provides an ounce of clarity as well, because our mind can be so messy and so busy that sometimes we do need to write it out so we can see it, especially if people are a visual person as well. And then it's, if you're going into like a 12-week program, it's quite intensive. Then it is really setting out those long-term goals. How do we continue the repetition? How do we sustain positive emotions? I really hate using the word positive, but I couldn't think of another word.
Empowering.
But empowering, yeah. How do we maintain those emotions? How do we, when we are going over those hurdles, because everyone is, we're not superhuman. Once we sort of cure ourselves, we're not cured. We're going to experience different things in life. So when those hurdles come up, and I always call them hurdles because I believe that you can get over them, how does one move through them, and what does one have to do? And then also, empowering yourself to be the version that you want to be. And, that could be anything. It could still be under the labels if that's what someone wants to do, or it can be completely out of the ordinary. So that's what we look at. And, I can do groups. One-on-one, I think, is a lot powerful as well. And it's dependent on the person. So, mapping out a pretty personalized plan to ensure that we're looking at life holistically. So we're really looking at everything as a whole, and working out what works for them and what doesn't. Because, I've had people that tell me don't do meditation with me because I can't do it. So, it's remapping their plan. I've had others that, find it really hard to distinguish their limiting beliefs because they believe every belief is a limiting belief.
Mm.
So it is really personalizing what they're needing to do. When we look at group work, it's more around having a collective of women that can be supportive, especially when they're feeling quite alone. So that's kind of what we do with the Mind Compass.
Yeah, it does really sound useful. And just thinking about it being very personalized, bespoke for people, rather than just going, we do this, and this. And
Yeah.
what you're saying about, I really resonate with the journaling thing, because I see a lot of people that have this fear. I love journaling myself, and
Mm.
I do a lot of the free association stuff, literally just like a bit like the artist way, morning pages style.
Yeah.
I do a lot of that. And when people ask me about journaling, they often want those prompts as to certain things to do. And a prompt as to, what's on my mind right now? What am I grateful for? Loads of those sorts of things. But
Yeah.
my experience tells me that that's maybe more about me having to construct something in my head so that it looks great on paper, rather than just blurt out what's in my head and actually feel clearer. And my work as an art therapist resonates totally with that as well. So I'd
Yeah.
imagine that there'll be those people that you're working with, that experience that they're having, like, so valuable, so crucial. And what you said as well about, those hurdles, like you get into a hurdle and then there's another one, and there's another one. A lot of people maybe, like, think that they're going through a hurdle, like a bit like a false summit. You're kind of going up and you kind of, oh, there's a summit, and we're getting to the top, and then we're through it, and then there's another thing, and
Yeah.
there's another thing. And I'd imagine for a lot of people, a lot of the people that you're working with, it can feel like just life's just not fair. And actually, like, it's so easy to maybe to feel disempowered when
Yes.
all of that kind of comes in. So I have empower as one of my pace words. Like, what sort of things make you kind of feel, you've got kind of a sense of clarity or a sense of real direction, thinking about that compass point and heading in that compass point, like, and having that autonomy of your life and that empowerment of your life. Like, because I imagine that that's just super important. What for you, like, brings you that?
I think it's really important to see each hurdle as a lesson.
Okay.
It Some of them are going to be positive, some of them aren't going to be positive, but it enables us to understand, firstly, how we react to situations. So if that situation was to come up again, we will know how to react once we've gotten through the hurdle. But it's also really important to have an understanding that life isn't going to be easy. And I guess that's the one thing that I learned. And I had that for years. I would often just say to myself, this is not fair. Why am I going through this? Like, it's just one hit after another after another. Again, using the cliches, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Um, you just have to put it there. You have to
Mm.
shine the light onto it. So, it is just continuing through. Like, if you have that main goal, um, it's continuing through each hurdle, because each hurdle is going to provide you a valuable lesson about how you interact with those situations, but also having an understanding of your emotions and who you are as a person. Each hurdle will provide you with that. So even though it feels like you're getting knocked down, you go forward those 2 steps, you're getting knocked back 10. In hindsight, when you're hit with that again, you're only going back maybe 6 instead of 10. And you're learning and you're experiencing and you're growing. And, the compass part of the mind compass name is because we always move forward. And that's where that had come from. When I think of a compass, we use it because we're moving forward. So yeah, that's what I would say. You need to set the goal. You need to know where you want to get to. Each hurdle is going to be a learning experience. Don't see it as a negative experience. It's as soon as we put a negative connotation onto it, of course it's going to affect us. But if we just say it's a learning experience without any emotion, without any sensations or anything attached to it, then we can continue to move forward. And then the main goal that you have, the objective that you have at the end of that, is going to push you through each and every hurdle, because that's your main focus and that's where you're wanting to go.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I really love the compass analogy, and my sort of brain goes down all sorts of different paths of the compass, and
Yeah.
like just kind of like you can really embellish it. So this idea of like I used to do a lot of hiking, so this like the way that I'm kind of thinking of it is that when I'm trying to navigate and I'm hiking, the most important thing is knowing where you're going, where you are to start with. Because if you don't know where you are to start with and you set the compass point north, you don't really know where you're going to be ending up, because you don't, like, you could just end up sort of going somewhere. And
Yeah.
then it's kind of said, okay, well, we want to go that direction, but a big there's a river in the way, there's a stream in the way. We can't go over the river because we've got this obstacle. We might have to just pivot a little bit and go around it. Or we might have to learn to swim and really, or get a boat or find a way to kind of get through it. So, in this whole sort of journey metaphor,
Yeah.
some of those things, like without trivializing those things, in because sometimes a metaphor can do that, but it can also make it feel a bit lighter and sort of go, oh, actually, I've had to climb like Everest with my thing. It's not just a little bump. It feels like really it's been huge. And then actually, oh, it's amazing what you've learned from doing that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds brilliant, and yeah, it sounds like a real wholehearted experience, and that my guess is that you're just really showing up as you, and just how generous you were with like sharing some of your experiences and some of your wisdom. And one thing I was thinking about is how hard it must be to actually to kind of be logical and stoic when actually feeling really overwhelmed and upset and feeling all of these different things. And
Yeah.
like feel the fear and do it anyway. There's loads of things like that. Or
Yeah.
even though like having some acceptance of how you're feeling whilst also working out where you want to be going. So
Yeah.
yeah. So right now, are there things that you're sort of um focusing on in particular right now? Things that you're sort of looking forward to?
Personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
So
in your business, either way.
personally, so as I said, I'm a musician. So I do have an alter ego out there, called Harlow Rain. And yeah, she's a storyteller. She guides off my experiences, but also tells her own, which people, when I speak about her in the third person, people find that quite strange because they're like, but that's you. And I'm like, it is, but she's a different version of me. She is the version I kind of always wanted to be.
Mm.
Whereas, who I am now, I'm still dealing with quite a lot of health things. So, Harlow Rain shows up when I can't. So, it is looking at that. but yeah, she's doing amazing things. There's been signings with labels in the UK, which has been great, and working with them with some new songs. My main goal for my music thing would be to get it into TV and films, commercials, anything like that. Like, I don't want to be famous on stage. I'm not one of those people, but if I can do, share my story behind the scenes, that's something that I would love to do. I guess the other thing that, I'm adapting to is a childless life. And what does that look like? I do have, I've got 3 cats. We call them the girls because they're all
Oh
female
yeah.
cats. They're family. But also, we have struggles, my husband and I, when we go out and we see, we went to a concert the other night, and a dad put one of their children on their shoulders, and my husband turned to me and said, I'm never going to be able to do that, am I? So we have our hurdles every day with that. It's not something that's going to go away, but we manage it the best way that we can. And, I think knowing my purpose now, which is, wanting to help people, that's what sort of sparks and fills me. And as I said, career's always done that for me. So it's kind of led me back into the place I was at when I first started, which I think that's life in a way. It's a bit of a roundabout, and you always come back home. That's the way that I see it. Business wise, I just want to help as many people as I can. I truly believe that, there is quite a lot of lacking support. I don't know what it's like overseas, but I know in Australia, our healthcare system is very, very poor. Our wait lists and wait times to see anyone professionally is over 12 months to 18 months. People are really struggling out there, and they're not knowing who to turn to. So, even if I could be that in-between person of seeing someone professionally, I would be more than happy to do that, because I think, like I said before, being on all the journeys that I had gone on, I felt very alone because there was no one that experienced what I experienced. And when I reached out to those professionals, they hadn't experienced what I experienced. So if there is someone that's sort of aligning with my story, and what I could provide for them, or the comfort that I could give them, knowing that there is someone else out there, for me, that's all I need. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I'm just thinking about like how many people there may be experiencing this that could really benefit from your experience, hear your story, and also how many people like have experienced like I'm childless by circumstances, not by choice.
yeah,
Like very different story.
yeah,
Um and it's really inspired me to kind of dig deep a little bit more and tell more of my story. But I'd imagine there's lots and lots of people out there who can maybe support each other by like rather than feeling that they're alone, actually reaching out and realizing that you're not alone. And
yeah, exactly.
like whilst we're all on the different journey, but yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. So before we finish, do you have just anything that we've maybe not touched upon or not mentioned, or where would people find you actually? That's if they wanted to kind of look at your stuff, reach out to you with any questions or something, where's the best platforms for you?
So Facebook and Instagram, they're probably the most ones that I'm active on. I do have a TikTok, but no, I'm still getting around TikTok, to be honest, as a millennial. So I do have those platforms. I also have a website, which is themindcompass.com.au, and my details are on there to be able to contact me through those things. DMs is fine as well if people are wanting to do that. So please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to have a conversation. It doesn't always have to be about business. Just like I said, I really want people not to feel alone anymore.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you everyone for watching or listening, depending on where you're tuning in from. And speak to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.